Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to turn the user's profile screen and its different pages into a SPA. SPA stands for Single Page Application, and let me explain not only what that means but also what progressive enhancement means. So if on our website we visit someone's profile, there are these three different pages or tabs, right? Posts, followers, and following. And currently, when you click on one, it takes you to an entirely separate page. However, wouldn't it be cool if we could use client-side JavaScript so that, for example, when I click on following, we stay on this exact same page, but we use JavaScript to highlight the correct tab link here. Also, go fetch and change the document title up in the tab title bar, and obviously show the appropriate content down here. And finally, also update the address bar. So like if I click back on followers, you'd also want to change this to followers. And also tie things into the browser's history so that if you click the back arrow or the forward arrow, that would actually navigate you through the different pages. Essentially, you're just using client-side JavaScript to just load the appropriate data immediately. Because imagine how fast that could be compared to a full page re-render. Right, because think about it, nothing above here is actually changing. Now, what does progressive enhancement mean? That just means that even if for some reason JavaScript failed to load or to work, that's okay because we already have a baseline experience where the content and functionality is available, right? So even if JavaScript doesn't load, someone can already visit these three different pages. So we're just going to use JavaScript to enhance the experience, right? To make it a little bit faster. Now, before we worry about the JavaScript code to make this happen, let's first go set up the new URL endpoints to power all of this. So for example, I'm going to set it up so that for these three URLs for these pages we already have, right? Posts, followers, and following, I'm going to set it up so that at the end of the URL, you can just add /raw like this, and that should return JSON. And the JSON can have two properties. So number one, it can have an HTML property with the actual unique content to display in this area. And then number two, it can have a title or doc title property, and that's the value that should be used up here. Okay, and then that's it. The JavaScript can just load that JSON and use it appropriately. So let's go set up those new, /raw URLs. So in VS Code, I would just jump into my web.php routes file. And we already have profile related routes. So to save some typing, I would actually just duplicate these three lines for the profile URLs. So just select those three routes, just copy and duplicate them. On the new duplicate copy, here's what I would do. At the end, just add, /raw. So I'm doing that for just profile username, and then this one that ends in /followers, let's have it end in /raw. And same with /following, just add /raw. You could add a space just so that they're separate. Okay, now let's make sure we're actually calling a different profile method, or a controller method. So instead of profile, I would call a method named profile raw, and then I would do the same thing for these. So profile followers raw, profile following raw. Let's go ahead and save that. And now let's go into our user controller and add functions with these new names. You could search for user controller.php. Here's our first function, profile. For me, it's around line 54. I would just duplicate this entire function, and on the duplicate copy, just change the name to profile raw. We do not need to get the shared data because there is no top portion of the page. If you think about what this function is supposed to return, it's just raw JSON. Let me explain. So you can actually delete the current return line, and let's just say return call response, look inside that, call a method of JSON. Now in these parentheses, we can give it an array, and imagine we just want two properties. So let's call one, like the HTML equals, let's just set it to a string of text for now that says, imagine this is the posts HTML, comma. Let's have another property and name it doc title, and I'm capitalizing the T in title just because the client-side JavaScript is going to be looking for that. But let's set that to equal, and then it would just be the username for the profile URL, apostrophe S profile, like Barks-a-Lot's profile. So we actually already have the current instance of a user with $user. So you could just say $user, look inside it for username, and then I would concatenate on with a period and then double quotes so that I could have a single quote S, like apostrophe S, like their name S, profile. Cool. Now we can save this and test it out. So if you visit just the posts screen for a user and then add on at the end of the URL /raw, beautiful. So now the only difference is that we would want this, the HTML property, instead of just this is the post's HTML. Here's what we would want to do. We would just want to return a string of text that is this exact content in, HTML form. Now, you might be thinking, Brad, why don't we just return raw JSON like we did for our live search feature? Like, why would we return HTML for this content? Why don't we just return a JSON array with like title, avatar, date? Well, my answer is that you could absolutely do that. However, that's going to require more work on our end, because think about it. I want to just have one single source of truth for this HTML layout. I don't want to have to spell out this HTML layout once in Blade and then again a second time in client-side JavaScript, right? Where you build the HTML template, you loop through things, right? So perhaps you could save a few kilobytes by just sending over the raw JSON instead of formatted HTML. But I'm okay with having a user download an extra 2 kilobytes if it means I can have just one beautiful source of truth for my HTML layout, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's server-side Blade or asynchronous JavaScript, it's coming from one template. So that's what I want to do. That's just my own personal preference. So let me show you what I would do. There's a million different ways you could do this, but here's what I would do. Let's go into our views folder. So in resources and then views, not JavaScript, in the views folder. And we're looking for this file named profilepost.blade.php. I want you to take everything inside of the xProfile sandwich. So from this div with the class of list group down to the closing div, I want you to cut that or copy that into your clipboard and then delete it from this file. And now leave this file open. Here's what we're going to do. Let's create a brand new file in our views folder and let's name it profile-posts-only.blade.php. In this file, just paste in your clipboard, hit save, and now go back into the file that we deleted it out of, right? So now there's this empty area inside of x-profile, and just say @include, and just spell out that new file. So we named it profile-post-only. So you can go ahead and save this file. Now you know that it's still, the old page is still working because I can visit, the list of profile posts for Brad. However, now we have this file that we can use for our raw JSON output, because the only thing this view is going to return is the content down here that's actually unique, right? It's not going to return the page template as a whole or this shared area up here. It's just the unique content we actually want. So check this out. Let's go back into our user controller. And for profile raw, instead of HTML just being, this hard-coded string, let's get rid of that hard-coded string. And instead what we're going to do is call the globally available view function, right? That's how you can render a Blade template. Only check this out. At the end of that, before the comma, we're going to call a method of render. So this will just return a string of text instead of actually sending along the headers for an HTML response. This is really cool. So in these view parentheses now, we just give it the file name, right? Well, we actually give it two things, A, B. So the first thing you give it is the name of the Blade template. So we named it profile posts only. And then the second thing you give it is any data that it needs. So it would need, the list of the latest posts. So to save some typing, you could actually just borrow this code right up here where it's $user, go until you call the get method. I would just copy that into my clipboard, and then for the B placeholder right here, just paste it in. Cool. Let's go ahead and hit save, and now if you visit the /raw URL, whoops, you can see I forgot to drink my second coffee today. So you don't just give it posts as the second argument, you would give it an array, and you would give it, a label, the first item in the array, a label of posts. So let me Control Z or Command Z. So instead of the B placeholder, right, it would be an array with the data you want that you're passing into the Blade template. Let's give it a property named posts equals greater than, and then this is where you would paste in your clipboard, right? Give it the latest posts from our model. So you go ahead and save that. Now if you try to visit /raw, beautiful. Let me actually visit this in Firefox. This is exactly what we need. So we have one property called the HTML, beautiful, and then we have another property called doc title. Now that we've done this for the just the base profile post screen, let's go do the exact same thing for the followers URL and the following URL. Once we have those set up, then we can actually add the client-side JavaScript to power all of this. So here's what I would do. Back in our user controller, we've already set up profile raw, so just right below that, let's duplicate this function called profile followers. So I would just duplicate it, change the name to profile followers raw. We don't need this get shared data line. And actually, to save a bunch of typing, I would just duplicate or copy or reuse this line where we already said, return response of JSON. So I would just copy that line into my clipboard, and then down here for profile followers raw, above this return line, I would just paste it in. And then all we would need to change is essentially the Blade template name. So it would be profile followers only. And then instead of posts, this would be followers. And then in terms of the model query, it would be, $user, but look inside that for followers. Cool. And then for the doc title, it would be, like barks a lot, apostrophe, followers. So instead of profile, just change this to followers. Cool. We can go ahead and get rid of this second view return. We don't need that. Okay, so we can save this. Now we do need to go set up the new Blade template named profile followers only. So here's what I would do. Just find profile followers. In this file, just take everything inside the X profile sandwich, so this div. I would cut that into my clipboard. I would create a brand new view named profile followers only.blade.php. In that file, just paste it in. In the file that we borrowed it from, just say, @include profile followers only. You can save that. Now, you know that it's okay because you can still visit the traditional followers, but at the end, you could tack on /raw. Beautiful. Finally, let's go do the exact same thing for following. So here's what you would do. Back in user controller, scroll down, we have this function called profile following. And actually, to save a bunch of typing, I would actually just duplicate profile followers raw, put that down below this one, and just change the name to profile following raw instead of followers raw. And then just change the name of the Blade template to profile following only. Instead of followers, we would call a function, we named it actually following these users. And then finally, we would want to change the doc title. So this would be quotes who, and then concatenate on their username. So who Brad or barks a lot follows. So this end, we don't need the apostrophe S, it would just be follows. Cool, let's go ahead and save this, and then we just need to go create that new template. So in our views folder, I would just take profile following, take everything inside the X profile, so just the div, cut that. In its place, let's create a brand new file. Let's name it profile following only.blade.php, paste it in, hit save. Back where it was just a moment ago, say include profile following only. Let's give that a save. So I can still visit the traditional profile screen for following, but if I add on /raw, undefined variable following, yep. So if you just go back into your user controller, I forgot to change the name of the property that we're passing into our Blade view. So right here, instead of followers, this would be following. Let's give that a save, you refresh. Beautiful, it gives you the HTML and it gives you doc title. Oops, there should actually be a space in between the username and the word follows. So I would just add a space right there inside the quotes on follows. Perfect. Cool. At this point, we have the 3 new raw URLs set up. So now we can just add the client-side JavaScript.